Welcome, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Hope you guys are doing fantastic. We are alive, believe it or not. I know it's been a little while, but we're back in action. We're fully back in the swing of things. We're back from our trips to the West Coast. It was a nice little jaunt out
wonderful.
west. We had a great time. But yeah, we're back. We're back focused on the task at hand now. So hope you guys have been doing fantastic in our absence. I, as usual, am the host, Zach Davis, making a triumphant return from Washington State.
And with an even more triumphant return is Emmy Davis,
including
your co-host.
fanfare. We've made it back. We're still recovering from jet lag. Emily's shipping back out this weekend. She's got some stuff going on. So
no, not to Boston.
That's The Departed, which we will not be talking about today.
No, isn't that the name of that like Irish
the song?
Yeah,
the do. Yeah, it's in The Departed.
Oh. It's been a while since I've seen The Departed.
I don't blame you. That does not exactly strike me as an Emmy core movie.
You know, it is one of my preferred Scorsese movies, though.
It is. It's a great one. It's thoroughly entertaining. Patriot Act, I love it. But we're not talking about The Departed today.
No.
So
we're talking about a bad movie.
In our exhaustion, in our scrambling to try and figure out what we were going to do for this episode after, getting off of a plane, we red-eye flighted it and have been working ever since earlier this week. But we have decided that we were going to do something a little bit
we talked about it at the end of the podcast last time, at the last weekly highlight.
Yeah.
Discussed doing a bad movie. And
we have definitely...
We're sticking to it.
We've definitely landed on one.
We have found one of the best bad movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, back in 1991, there were all kinds of classics that were just erupting into the scene. Stuff such as Silence of the Lambs, JFK is another massive one from that year. T2, obviously one of the best action movies ever created. Boys in the Hood, and just other things that were just popping up left and right. But there was one that was a straight-to-VHS release that just kind of quietly snuck its way back into pop culture in the past several years. Today we're talking about...
Snuck its way into our hearts, really.
Today we're talking about Japanese katanas and everything in between. This is Samurai Cop. This is a 1991, like I said, straight-to-VHS release. Pretty horrible movie. Genuinely just a poorly made, poorly written.
One of the notes I have for this movie is that the dialogue, this is like a really specific thing, but the dialogue feels like if you were to have a human teaching English to an alien and they're like working their way through the syllabus, and one of the last things that they're doing is they're like, okay, now you have to write a movie script. And the human is just getting so fed up, and this is like the third try, and they're just like, good enough. This is like Tua after 9 concussions writing a screenplay. That's even better.
That is what this feels like. It is a fever dream, and also just stupid enough for you to be able to keep track of it. It is completely purposeless. There's like abominably sexist. It is.
Oh my gosh! Like
painfully paced. It is so horrible. There is almost no plot to this movie, even though it is very much trying to have a plot, and in like maybe one line of dialogue, trying to have maybe something to say about just the operation of organized crime and stuff like this. But it generally is just a bizarre piece of fiery garbage that is, I like fire and I like watching things burn, and sometimes you just want to watch something burn. And like, this movie is the thing to watch, and it will warm you up just fine.
So good. It
is an absolute
terrible.
joy.
I enjoy the heck out of it.
This was
except for oh my gosh, there are some massively uncomfortable sex scenes.
Oh my god.
There's one of them that's genuinely like 2 minutes long, and it's
2 minutes of really bad late 80s porno. It is genuinely just an absolute atrocity.
It's not. Ugh.
So all of that to say, we're moving away from our Grand Budapest hotels and our Lost in Translations and just completely shifting gears into this week, and I think it's going to be fun. We've had a lot of fun watching and talking about this movie over the past couple of days, and we are just going to light into this one. So yeah, Samurai Cop is a low budget action movie that is starring Matthew Corradus as Joe Marshall and Mark Fraser as Frank Washington, a pair of detectives that are tasked with helping eliminate the threat of an organized crime group called the Katana. That's basically all this movie is about.
Yes. That's it. And I went through a pretty thorough IMDb deep dive on every cast member, and I could find nothing of note on anybody.
Yeah.
I was hoping to find like one actor that was like, oh, and they were in that movie. No, nothing.
Painfully devoid of any kind of success. This movie is.
Most of the movies were rated like 3 stars.
Yeah, this
3 out of 10, not 3 out of 5.
There is nothing to this movie except cult classic. I mean, you can look at something like The Room and know who Tommy Wiseau is. This movie has none of that. There is no like director that redeemed himself through an arc of just his personability or anything like that. This is just straight to VHS hot garbage. This whole movie, legend has told that this whole movie was done in one take. It certainly feels that way. The ADR in this movie is absolutely abysmal.
A majority of it is dubbed over.
A majority is dubbed over by the director. There are, I guess in the spirit of properly tackling this like a weekly highlight, let's do a quick synopsis on it. There's not a lot to synopsize here. I mean, if I was really to boil it down, I could say that this movie is exactly what I just said it's about. It's about these 2 detectives who are working to take down this organized crime group called the Katana. One of the detectives is a transfer from San Diego. He's known as the samurai among the people because he speaks fluent Japanese and is trained in martial arts. He does not speak fluent Japanese.
He continuously struggles with the pronunciation of Japanese names.
Are you Fujinawa? It consistently, like, incredibly poor. Like, I can't even call it character work. This is not character work. No. This is just showing up. And there's a really funny... There's a gag in this movie that is entirely not meant to be a gag in this movie, but they had to do a lot of reshoots for it. Like, I guess they had only shot half of the movie by the end of the initial photography, and they get to the end of it. The main actor cuts his hair, which is shoulder length.
Well, it had been like 7 months.
Yeah, it had been 7 months, so he decided to cut his hair. So they had to find a wig for him when they were doing reshoots, and
they used like this awful woman's wig that
it's glorious.
Barely resembles his hair, like enough that if you were legally blind and weren't wearing your glasses, you might not know.
It's even better when he pairs it with a trucker hat. I mean, just
it's even
magic.
better when it falls off his head.
I do have to like briefly mention the opening scene of this movie. The first time I started this movie up after I'd never seen this all the way through. I've seen clips of it many times over the years. The first time I started this movie, I started like one of those YouTube full movie versions of it, and I figured it'd be pretty easy to find for this one because it's such a flaming piece of garbage. I started it up and I was like, I have to be missing something. I was like, this starts in the middle of a conversation. Like, I do not know what's going on here. So
that's just how
logged into Tubi and pulled it up on Tubi to see if I was incorrect. And I wasn't. It just genuinely starts in the middle of this conversation. There's a lot of bizarre choices like that are just made throughout the course of this movie. And budget constraints and shooting in LA and all kinds of expenses that happened. This was probably shot, over the course of 89 to 90. It's so painfully bad. There are so many great things that have been made by this time, and I always like to give flowers to independent filmmaking. This is so much. This is like a car salesman decided to make a movie. I am consistently baffled by it.
Okay, we said that we were gonna do a synopsis, and then we derailed a little bit. We do kind of like need to walk through a little bit of what happens in this movie, even though it's not following much of a plot. So like basically it starts and it's the Japanese gang having a discussion about just
taking power in Los Angeles.
Power, furthering the drug ring, just general bad guy gang stuff. And then it jumps immediately to Samurai I wanted to call him Samurai Jack, no. To Joe. And his partner, and they're like...
got off the bus.
We're gonna go catch some bad guys.
Let's go catch us some bad guys.
Like, it's wild. And then they go. And
yep. I have to disclose that we didn't mention this earlier, but Joe is white and his partner is black, and it's very
lethal. It's inspired by Lethal Weapon. The director has said that.
It is actively the Lethal Weapon pair.
But yeah, anyways, they go and there's this huge car chase sequence, and they end up gosh, this is just such a fever dream. I don't even know if they actually recover anything.
There's a drug exchange. They chase down these guys in the car. The driver ends up like getting burning. There's a car explosion for no real reason. I mean, he runs into a tree and the car explodes, but he's on fire, and they put him out and bring him to the hospital.
Yeah, I guess that's the point of this scene. Thank you. Like I said, just such a fever dream. This movie is.
I'm just trying to like rope it up as best I can. It like I feel like I'm rustling cattle in my head trying to recount this movie. They take him to the hospital. The Yakuza talk about murdering the guy in the hospital so he doesn't squeal. There's a really beautiful exchange about putting a head on a piano. They hatch a plan to go to the hospital. They end up sawing the guy's head off and returning it. And then there's a showdown between the protagonist and the antagonist, and then there's another showdown, and
then there's the restaurant scene.
There's the restaurant scene where Joe gets the ability to really flex his morality in front of everybody.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in favorite
scenes.
But basically, the point of that scene is to introduce the Katana's leader's girlfriend, who Joe's like, I'm coming for this girl, and he does. Girl. He basically like stalks her and then seduces her, and like just not even seduces her, just like takes her to his house and is just like, yeah. It reminds me of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia with Dennis. It's because of the implication. Like, that's what it makes me think. That's exactly how I felt watching this scene.
This is absolute like garbage. I hate stuff like this so much. It's incredibly funny and incredibly just like damning at the same time. But
it is so offensive in countless ways.
But
there's so offensive.
There's just a little bit of magic to how blatant it is. Like, it is just so pervertedly stupid about the way that it tackles these things. Like, there are no women in this movie that are there for anything other than Joe to like ogle at. It's so funny. It's so funny and terrible.
So then basically, after Joe has seduced the girlfriend of the Katana leader, the Katana leader gets pissed, and he's like, doesn't. We're coming for you guys, and he does, and then we have yet another showdown, and
they end up capturing Joe's partner.
There's obviously
they threaten to take his Johnson right off. There's a really good quote from that sequence too.
There's a scene where there's this
it.
female cop character throughout the movie who is just
another sleeps with Joe character.
Like, another sleeps with anyone character. There's a point where she's on screen with this cop, with another cop, and he's like older,
like a
not particular, like not attractive, and she's just like, "Hey, we don't have anything to do. Do you want to have sex?" And he's like, "No, what's wrong with you?" And it's just like, really, like, how demeaning can you be to women? But anyways,
on the other side of the spectrum, that just makes me think of that scene in Hot Fuzz. Well, I guess the several scenes in Hot Fuzz where there's the girl character that just completely, like, consistently makes jokes like that all the time. And
is that Olivia Colman's character? Am I remembering that wrong? I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. So it might be. It might be. I don't remember exactly, but it just made me think of that. And like, that's not exactly tasteful, but it's better than this. I can tell you that for sure.
Anyways, so this cop woman is the bad guys come to her house to try to find out where I almost called him Samurai Jack
Joe.
is. Samurai Joe is, and they like are torturing her. But when they first find her, she's in the kitchen cooking. Great, thank you. And she's like using her pan, and they come in, and she opens a drawer to her right, like far to her right, to grab her gun. She has a pan full of hot oil in her hand. Why does she not use this weapon? And as a matter of fact, they end up torturing her with the hot oil in the pan. And I was astonished that this...
Lots of burning in this movie.
I couldn't handle it.
A lot of burning. I wonder if the director had like burning issues as a child. He was
an arson. Arsonist.
He was a little shit is what he is. I cannot imagine. Like, I went on his Wikipedia just to see if he did anything afterwards. Porn. I guess so. Like, he made a bunch of those Emmy films, and then made Samurai Cop like at the tail end of it, and then there's nothing listed on his Wikipedia after that. Anyway, all of that to say, there's a final showdown after these series of events take place. Samurai Cop finally picks up a katana and fights a guy in just an absolutely horrendous sword fighting sequence. And then, yeah, he ends up getting with the girlfriend of Katana after he murders the boss, and they live happily ever after. There is no rhyme or reason to this story. I can...
There is no, like, I guess it makes more sense to go ahead and do this now. Do you want to go ahead and do, like, themes and all that?
I genuinely have, like, what
because there are none.
I usually have this section marked as what we love about it. I have what we hate about it. For starters, the exposure shifts between shots is insane. This movie is all shot in daylight because they could not afford to shoot at night.
I think I could do better with my iPad.
It is frequently shot at different times of day in different locations and stitched together to the point that it is like nauseating to follow up with everything. There's
several scenes that are like clearly shot in different locations at different times of day, and it is just like it's so jarring and like.
There are sped up sequences during car chases and during sword fights just to make them look like more intense. I guess there
are immensely ill-timed cuts and musical cues.
Painful. Like, I do not know how you get this off the cutting room floor.
There's one point where you're in this action sequence and it cuts literally as like somebody's landing from jumping off of a rooftop to a woman taking off her robe.
Yeah, it's glorious. I just don't know. I don't know at what point you like wipe your hands and you're like.
I don't know at what point this movie
we did good work.
Becomes a porno. Like in the second half of it, there is so much sex that I was like, this is not what the first 50 minutes of this movie was. When did this change?
It's that happy medium. People are sad in the tail end of the 80s because they just don't have as many drugs as they once had, and everybody's like just trying to get their rocks off in every way possible. Okay, I did not put anything down for themes of this movie. There are no interesting themes in this movie.
There's
just
nothing
had,
to be
like,
taken from this.
Shit talking to do about it.
We have our entertaining, enlightening both thing that we always note on. Neither.
This movie can be entertaining if you're watching it like 3 beers deep and just looking for something to point and laugh at with like a group of people. If you're just watching this alone in your house, there's probably nothing going for you.
You're not gonna like it.
Yeah,
well, you might like it, but yeah.
There are several like laugh out loud moments just because it is so bad, and I think you can get that level of entertainment out of it if you're just looking for something to just absolutely blow your mind with how bad it is. Okay, favorite scenes. Well, one of my favorite scenes is the car chase sequence.
I have that one down too.
For starters, there are several sped up sequences like I was talking about earlier, but there's also a frequent urging from Joe for his partner to shoot people, and he's like, shoot him.
He says, shoot him. He says it 4 or 5 times,
and then he finally shoots the guy, and he goes, you got him.
And again, just the shift in delivery from the shoot him to the got him, like it's so clearly
80 yard in.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Garbage. It is so terrible. But the end of that sequence ends with the driver catching on fire. And my favorite part about this is that the driver changes ethnicities between the time that he's driving the vehicle and is rolling around on the ground on fire. It is very clearly a completely different person. And while he's screaming, his mouth is closed. There's just like there's so much garbage.
There's my favorite part of this scene is when it's towards the beginning of the chase, and the van in front of them, like there's a guy with the door open shooting at them. Shoot him. And they do shoot him, and he falls out of the van, and they try to stop, but end up running him over, and then they just go, oh man. I love that. That one made me laugh and point at the screen.
Genuinely any scene with the captain.
He's my favorite character.
He is the funniest person in this movie, undoubtedly. He's like the best angry captain cop. He's so funny. He's frequently just like yelling at these guys, and they are like, they're screwing with him in like teenage boy ways. It is so ridiculous.
It's like, I mean, if we're a Captain Cop relationship, it's very much like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Andy Samberg. Yeah, like, and Captain Holt. I can't remember Andy Samberg's name right now.
Like he'll walk up and kiss the captain on
yeah,
the
I was gonna say
that's
a really good, another one of my favorite scenes is it's the captain is introduced in this scene and he's chewing him out, and he gets so mad and he's gonna send Samurai Joe back to San Diego, and then he decides not to, and he kind of like reconciles with his anger, but he's like, you son of a bitch, get out of here anyways. And then Frank goes up to him and kisses him on the forehead, and he's like, you son of a bitch, get out of here, why'd you do that, and like points, and then takes like 15 seconds and
collapses back into his chair and starts laughing,
and he's just like incredibly terrible.
It's ridiculous.
But also, wow, how fun.
But pretty much any scene where Joe is making a face of effort in this, this dude's like, either I am mad or I am putting a lot of effort into this swing, or
his eyebrows can go so high. I'm very
angry. He looks like a wax figurine.
He does.
He looks like he has a terrifying face.
His eye, like, when he widens his eyes,
uncanny valley.
Very much. He is just, and the wig does not help. Like when he's wearing the wig and the trucker hat and it's back in a ponytail,
it's god awful.
It's terrifying.
It is downright like scary imagery. It's just so bizarre. I really couldn't like pin down a lot of scenes that because there are not a lot of scenes. Like the restaurant scene, sure.
It either has like really the scenes are too long or too short. There is no in between. You either get quick little shots, or it's the car chase, which is a long car chase where not much happens.
Car chase of the same shots like for 4 minutes.
There's that one shot of Joe in the car that I'm pretty sure they reuse, or that they had reused from when they were shooting the helicopter sequence.
It's so blatant. There's nothing to this.
No. The interaction with the nurse is another great scene.
The interaction with the nurse is number one. That's we're gonna save that for favorite quotes, just because that exchange between them is pure magic. Damn, like all my favorite scenes are intertwined with favorite quotes for this. So let's just jump into quotes.
Okay. I want to start. I was talking about that female cop character earlier, and there's a scene where she's up in it's not the car chase. It's the scene. Well, I guess it is the car chase.
Prior to the car chase.
It's like right before the car chase.
It's when the helicopter is scouting things out for them.
And she's up in the helicopter. He's down in the car. They're communicating over walkie-talkies or what have you. And she says something about like just keep it ready. And he's like, oh yeah, it's up and ready. And he says just keep it warm. She goes, it's warm and ready. And he looks. There's no one in the car with him. And he looks to the passenger seat and winks. And when we post this,
it's like he was supposed to be looking in the camera and winking, but
when we post this podcast to Instagram, I'm going to post the video of him winking because it's too great for you not to see. Yeah. Like,
reference our Instagram later because
it's so incredible.
At the end of the car chase sequence, she is like, oh well, good job, fellas, and he's like, I'll see you back at your place, and then it immediately cuts to them on the bed. Like it is. So you do not have a second to draw breath between the time that he says, I'll see you back at your place, to the time that she is ass out on the bed. It is absolutely wild. Okay. The Yakuza boss is when he's telling his hitman to go after the burned driver.
Yes, and he
tells him, I want his head on this piano.
No.
And
before that, the hitman's like, and he's burned real bad. Okay, no, he's burned bad, real bad. And then he switches to like, I will put his head on your piano.
The Yakuza boss says, I want his head on this piano, and the Yakuza hitman says, I will bring you his head and I will place it on this piano. It's just magic. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's so bad.
One of my favorites from the captain is when he's having yet another angry interaction in his office.
That's all he has.
I don't even know who this guy is, if I'm being completely honest. Excuse me. He's kicking him out, and he goes, "You motherfucker, I'll see you in hell. Leave me alone. Get a job!" And the "get a job" kills me every time. I've seen this scene so many times, and every time.
It's one of the few like good bits of dialogue between characters. This is the guy saying, "I'll see you in court," and the captain saying, "You motherfucker, I'll see you in hell." It's a real joy.
Leave me alone. Get a job. That's so great.
Going back a shade, there's an exchange between Joe and a nurse. We alluded to this earlier. Where
you've probably seen this clip.
This is the clip that I know Samurai Cop from. It's Joe talking to this nurse about the burned man, who they've brought to the hospital, and the nurse is like talking to him about the situation of the guy, that he's not going to be able to talk for a few weeks, and
talking to him not like a professional at all, by the way,
like a porn actress would be talking to another porn star. And she says, "Do you like what you see?" And he says, "Oh yeah." And she's like, "Do you want to touch it?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." And she's like, "Do you want to fuck me?"
"Do you want to go out with me?"
"Do you want to go out with me?" And he's like, "Mm-hmm." And the whole time, like in between each of these lines, it's cutting back to Frank, his partner's reaction, which is some of the most like unbelievable facial acting I've ever seen.
Look for the wink and Frank's reaction on Instagram.
It is so good. And she says, "Do you want to fuck me?" And he grabs the end of her stethoscope and holds it up to his mouth and says, "Bingo." Stethoscopes don't work that way, and they are not in her ears, so doubly they don't work that way, and just like little details like that are just so like, did you at what point were you checking the math for all this stuff? It is incredible.
And then she proceeds to be like, she like grabs his dick.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She grabs his Johnson and is like, "What are we working with here?" And he's
she like essentially is like, "It's not big enough. Have you been circumcised? Like your doctor must have cut off a lot of it."
Yeah.
What?
Excuse me.
And then Frank comes out of the room and he's like, "Have you been circumcised?" And Joe goes, Shut up,
man."
And again, one of the only natural dialogue moments in this movie. Like
it's so bizarre.
It's painful.
This is quickly followed by the hitman showing up and cutting the burned man's head off. And as he's leaving the facility with his accomplice, they are told to wait a minute by 4 different people within the course of about 45 seconds. There's "Hey, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. Hey, you, wait a minute.
Doctor.
Hey, doctor, wait a minute.
I need to see some ID."
It like back to back to back to back. It is so egregious. It's
backtracking the tiniest bit to talk about when they're cutting his head off.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, this nurse is sneaking in, and the cop that's supposed to be guarding the door is just blatantly flirting with one of the nurses and distracted, and he stops the woman that's sneaking in. And he's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Well, I have to change the trash. Can't I do that?" And he's like, "Okay." And so then she wheels this cart in, and out of the, like, not the trash can, but the obvious covered part of the cart next to the trash can pops, like, the hitman. And the way that he, like, rises out of the cart is absolutely hilarious. And then he, like...
This guy does not look like an Asian hitman by any stretch of the imagination, by the way. His cheekbones are bigger than the rest of his head.
Dude, he is a funky-looking guy. And then, like, it shows him, like, slicing the guy's throat. And then about 2 seconds later, his head is off.
He just pulls the head off.
And I was like, oh, his head's off now.
I've seen worse, and I've seen better. But this is holistically not going to save this movie at this point.
I want to know what they used for blood in this movie, because it is so violently bright red.
It's like pink. The one other quote that I had written down in this, because if we do like favorite quotes from this, we will be here all night. It is truly a movie filled with such stupid lines. You cannot pick which one.
I was having a hard time like really narrowing it down, and I think I got like a good 6.
Yeah,
maybe 5.
One of them that I marked down was the captain telling the boys that they've screwed up on the job, and an officer lost his hand.
An officer lost his hand is a very good line. Okay.
The way that he delivers it too is like he's ready to say an officer lost his life and backtracks to say he lost his hand.
Head, like, and there's also when we first meet the captain, within like seconds, he totally buffs up one of his lines. Like he says the Japanese katana gang, and it's so great.
The Japanese katana gang. Poor reading.
Okay, my last favorite line. It's when Samurai Joe has taken, her name's Jennifer, I think. That's the girlfriend, back to the house, back to his house, and she walks in and she's like, "Oh, this is the police station that you're taking me to question me, huh?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Is this your house?" And he goes, "Yeah, I own it month to month." I own it month to month is crazy, bro. I am going to...
The rabbit hole continuously gets deeper. I just pulled up the IMDb for this, and listed in the soundtrack as "Happy Birthday" uncredited.
From the one scene where he sings it to her in his Speedo.
I can't even
Again, great scene. I wish it wasn't immediately followed by the 2-minute sex scene, because that is so good. When he... I can't. Anyways, I own it month to month is going to be a go-to for me.
Let's move on. Let's move on to internet trivia.
Okay, wait. Soundtrack.
A quick soundtrack. The Sega Genesis will be
Gas.
proud.
It's gas.
It is 80s synth anthems like all the way through. And
dude,
if you have played Mega Man, congratulations. You have listened to the soundtrack for this movie.
This movie soundtrack.
Oh, Happy Birthday is on this movie too.
Okay. Moving on to half-ass internet research. So we kind of talked about a few of the things, because there really isn't much to say about this movie now that we're doing this pod, like, other than it's terrible, and
it sucks,
and I'm enjoying ragging on it so much, because it really it's one of the best,
it's one of the best
movies.
Shitty watches you could ever have.
There's not much information on it, and what information there is just incredible, but pretty much everyone in this movie, because the budget was so small, wears their own clothes and drives their own cars.
Yep.
And the weapons, though, those were supplied. They only had like 5 guns.
That's where all the budget went to.
They switch out guns you'll see characters have the same gun multiple times.
There's some incredibly short katanas in this.
There
are 3 different cuts of this movie, all having to do with ratings purposes on overseas distribution, but the fact that there are 3 different cuts of this movie is absolutely insane.
That's kind of crazy.
There are not 3 different cuts of Zack Snyder movies.
Well, not only does it have 3 different cuts, it has 3 different names.
That is so stupid.
Canada.
What is it? The FK18 rating version of it. There was a 2024 FK18 release of it. There's all kinds of like ridiculous overseas. The only rating I'm particularly familiar with is MPAA. I do not understand much about else, but all of that to say, it's bizarre that this movie even got distributed overseas, although I can see it as something that would be like considered a very niche, diluted classic among many people that didn't have access to a whole lot of other films at the time.
So the alternate names in Canada, it's called The Samurai of LA, and in your sweet precious Brazil, it is called An Invincible Cop.
An Invincible Cop.
Which
An Invincible Cop.
How do you say that in Portuguese?
I do not know. I think cop is federale.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. Alana, I'm sorry. The car chase sequences were shot in several different spots of LA. They're completely ludicrous. They're at no point are they on the same side of town between 2 shots.
No.
There's no sense. There's no sense to any of it. I mentioned the exposure earlier. This is shot during all different times of the day.
They couldn't afford lighting for that.
They couldn't shoot at night, so they just shoot at different times of the day and just pray that people will not notice the poor continuity of the placement of the sun.
The director's name is Amir Shervan.
Yeah, we're doing a
We
director
haven't-
highlight on him next week.
We haven't said his name once, and I just feel like, I mean, if we're gonna talk about his movie, we might as well say his name. So there's that.
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact. I think this is the most fun fact from this movie. The lead actor in this movie, Mark Hannon, he had worked as a bodyguard for Sylvester Stallone, and he was like, I'm gonna be an actor now. He's like,
Fujiwara.
I will be a big time actor.
Let me tell you, bro. You don't need to know Japanese to be able to pronounce Japanese names. I can assure you of that much. And if you're not able to do that, maybe acting is not for you, and maybe you shouldn't
star as Samurai Cop. The guy fluent in Japanese.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's quite the swordsmith himself. Okay, do you have any more fun facts?
I don't think I do.
I really, like, this is exactly what I wanted it to be. This is just a quick and easy BS podcast for us to just talk garbage about this movie, which is not typically my mantra for this podcast.
But you know what? It's kind of fun to switch it up.
With where we're at, I'm glad that we're doing it. Okay. Entertaining, enlightening, or both.
None.
Maybe entertaining, if you're lucky.
You can be entertained by this. You will not necessarily.
If you've got an hour and a half to burn, and you want to be like hands in your lap, laughing at something, this is probably going to be it. I can't guarantee everybody's going to get the same mileage out of it, but
there is zero enlightenment to be gained, though, unless you really want to find out how not to be super racist and sexist,
how not to be a movie.
Yeah, that too.
Okay, so yeah, that's pretty much it. So, like I said, Emily is going to be on vacay once again this weekend. I will be doing the usual roundup at the usual time, though. So we're gonna have
I might have some voice memos. I watched. I double featured Past Lives and The Grave of the Fireflies in the airport.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
Not a good call. Let's not do that ever again.
I double featured Casablanca and Casablanca in the airport.
And then I also rewatched Kiki's Delivery Service. And
good stuff.
Yeah, I might do some voice memos on the drive up to Ohio.
Yeah. In the meantime, I'm gonna have my hands full. I've got quite the amount of stuff to see this weekend. I'm gonna be seeing Y2K, which I've been hearing some pretty damning things about, which is a little disheartening, but I'll be seeing it anyway. Kraven the Hunter. God help me. This is Sony Pictures' next Marvel release after Venom: The Last Dance.
15% or something.
I don't know.
I don't know. I thought I saw that. I could be wrong. It was very low.
Yeah, I will be bringing alcohol to that showing.
Interstellar
is in IMAX. I will be watching Interstellar in IMAX on Saturday. That is one I am very, very hotly anticipating. It's been a while since I've seen Interstellar. I am quite the member of the Chris Nolan wheelhouse, but not as like loudly proclaimed as a lot of people are. But I'm excited to see Interstellar. It'll be very fun. And Lord of the Rings: War of the Rohirrim is also out this weekend, so I'll be checking that out. I don't know. This is going to be a pretty weird weekend. I've heard that 3 of the movies out of the 4 on this list are not so great. So it's going to be a long one. But
the one that you think is, and the one that you've heard is great is Interstellar.
Is the one that's already out.
But we haven't done our movie rating or double feature.
For Samurai Cop?
Yeah.
0.
0?
1. On a scale of 1, like, this is a terrible movie to this is a great movie, 1 out of 10. This is a terrible movie. This is an absolute garbage movie. For entertainment, you might be different. I'm not going to say that I don't recommend it to people to have fun.
I'm going to average the 2 of my scores and really go with like a 2. Like that's as much as I can give it.
No, I genuinely, like, my rating for this movie does not exist.
Can I see myself watching this movie again? Probably. Would I skip all of the horrendous sex scenes? Yes.
Yeah. This is shout out Samurai Cop. Anyway,
double feature.
Double feature this with a handle of Jack Daniels.
Double feature it with The Room, perhaps, if you want to see just a movie equally as bad, but with a little more lore behind it, I guess. That was kind of my pick.
Yeah, I
tried to think of something else in the cop vein, and I couldn't think of anything that was truly this bad. Like maybe if you Paul Blart.
Yeah, I
if you want something.
Paul Blart 2. I typically like do not go out of my way to watch really bad movies anymore, and I that's a pretty pretentious thing to say, but there's too many good movies to watch to like go out of your way to watch something bad, especially when you have as limited a time as we do to really consume stuff like this. So, if you liked that, you'll like this. I don't know, the Polar Express.
Polar Express. If you liked that, you'll like that Handle of Jack you were talking about earlier.
You will like crying yourself to sleep.
If you like this, you'll like killing yourself with honor, like the bad guy at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay, we will be doing the weekend roundup on Sunday, and I forgot to mention earlier, I did not forget, I was getting around to it, but we're going to be doing a little bit of a special episode. The second half of our weekend roundup is going to be with our guest, Miss Megan Noy. She's going to be joining us on the podcast, and we're going to be doing the top 10 winter weather movies to warm you up while you guys are sitting in your houses. We got a little bit of snow here in Tennessee today, and I could really just feel the season's greetings coming in full force. So we're gonna do some movies that are fun to watch around the fire, both with the family and without them. We'll have plenty to say about that kind of stuff, so stay tuned for that episode. I'm super excited to have Megan on. It's gonna be a really fun episode. Yeah, all that to say, we love you guys. We hate Samurai Cop. We're glad to be home. We're glad to be back on track. There are movies to be watched. There are bells to be jingled. There's so much going on this season.
I'll be back on for realsy track after this weekend.
Yeah,
crazy month for us, really.
We'll be fully back in the swing. We still have The Brutalist left this month. We still have Nosferatu left this month. We still have so much to cover this month.
I know you cannot wait to watch Baby Girl.
I'm just over the moon.
I'm a Brutalist boy. You're a Baby Girl.
I will be watching The Brutalist several times, and that is a 4-hour movie. I don't think the more that I hear about it, the more like I pick out outfits for what I'm going to wear to the movie. I am so unbelievably excited for it. So yeah, stay tuned. We're gonna have some big things coming up this month, even if this weekend is gonna be a pretty quiet one. But definitely check out our episode on Monday at 10, and we will see you guys on the other side. Emmy, you got any closing notes for the lovely people?
You guys are beautiful, and I appreciate you listening, as always.
You're beautiful inside and out.
Kisses.
Unlike Joe, the Samurai Cop.
No, don't stay away from anything.
He is an ugly rapist man.
Whoa. Okay. On that note, I think we will say goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.